What's going on, guys? Wanted to make a quick video showing you one of the projects I worked on tonight. And ideally I would have wanted to continue working on the knives that I showed you guys in the last video update. But this is something that I really needed to get out of the way and get finished before I really go on to work on these other projects, as this is something I do need for those. So what we have here is a 6-inch milling machine vise that I recently purchased off of eBay. And I got a pretty good deal on it. It was only about $10 to win the auction and maybe $35 or so for shipping. So all things considered, $45 for a 6-inch milling machine vise in this condition really isn't all that bad. Now that being said, it did have a few minor issues with it. For one, I did have to take it completely apart and clean all the chips and gunk out of it. And while doing so, I did notice that there was one very small spot on the Acme screw here that had some chips out of it, which actually causes the moving jaw to bind up when it's almost all the way open. But that being said, it's really not that big of an issue. I probably won't have to open it that wide very often, if at all. And it's not that I can't open it, it's just that it kind of gets a little bit harder. So overall, not a huge deal, especially considering the price. Now that being said, it did not come with a handle, so I'm improvising a cheap pair of vice grips here in the meantime before I can go ahead and fabricate one. It really shouldn't be too hard to make a little crank handle for this. And the other probably biggest issue was that it didn't have any vice jaws. So I didn't really have any kind of flat or even surface to mount my work pieces in. And originally I did actually look on eBay and some other places for some vice jaws to just go ahead and buy a set for this. But I couldn't find one with the appropriate spacing for the mounting holes here. So ultimately I just decided to make some myself, and I actually got to put my surface grinder to use for the first time. And what I had was some 3/8 inch by 2 inch flat stock mild steel lying around. So I went ahead and put that piece on my magnetic table, surfaced it on both sides, got everything flat and parallel. And then I went and trimmed it down for 2 vice jaws here, front and back. And probably the hardest thing, or the most time consuming of all this, was making sure I got the measurements right to drill for the bolt holes. And once I had those where I wanted them, I went ahead and drilled them, tapped them, and used some 1/2 inch all thread to mount to the base here. Then once that was done, once the jaws were in place, I actually mounted the vise to the table using a dial indicator, which I have this cheap one here. I chucked that into a collet. I used the dial indicator to make sure the fixed jaw, the face of the fixed jaw, was actually square to my quill. And once I had that about where I wanted it, I bolted everything down, made sure that this bottom face of the vise was actually perfectly square as well, as I wasn't sure how flat or parallel the vise was in the first place. Actually turned out to be pretty good tolerance, actually. So I got everything squared up perfectly where I wanted it. Once that was done, I actually put in a 3/4 inch end mill to face the top, make sure it was perfectly flat and square, and then I milled the sides to square them up as well. So right now I got the vise just about perfectly located, at least within a 1/2 thousandth or 1,000th. And I got everything flat, square, and ready to go. And right now I got some 1-2-3 blocks in here just for a flat drilling and counterboring surface. But I can take those out and just about close these all the way. Since they are thinner stock at 3/8, this vise actually won't close all the way. It's got about a 1/16 of an inch gap in it once it closes to its maximum point. But that really shouldn't pose a problem, as if I drill anything or need to clamp anything that's too thin, I can always use a spacer block. So that's that. Got a nice functional vise here, all set up, ready to go, and I should be able to spend the next little bit of time in the shop working on the knives that I showed you in the last update. Which just for information purposes here, they are heat treated. They are mostly cleaned up except for this one, and ready for beveling. So that's that, guys. Hope you enjoyed the update. Any questions, please feel free to ask. Thanks for watching.